All right, welcome to today's info session with Berkeley SkyDeck as we open up batch 19 applications. The applications are open until August 23rd, and the batch will be 5.5 months and run from Monday, November 4th through April 18th, which is a Friday. I'm going to try to run through some of the highlights of the program, and then when I'm with Sanjay and when we're done, we'll stop recording and run through Q&A. So if you don't mind holding your questions until the end, that would be fantastic. All right. So at SkyDeck, we always say, welcome to our moonshot territory. We're all about helping startups reach their moonshot and accelerate them, help them reach serious momentum, build traction, connect them to the right people, and really supercharge what they're building. At a high level, as I mentioned, this program is 5.5 months. It'll run from November through April, mid-April, with demo day at the beginning, like around or early mid-April. And the eligibility, though we are UC Berkeley's accelerator, and still people get very confused. We're the only university accelerator that takes startups from all over the world. You do not have to be affiliated with Berkeley. While it's true that 40% of our program participants are UC affiliated, 60% are from elsewhere, outside of the University of California ecosystem. And we're really looking for early stage startups that want to come to Silicon Valley and leverage all that the Valley has to offer, the top tier VCs, the industry experts. Typically at the end of the 5.5 months, these startups will be raising $2 to $5 million through Investor Month and Demo Day. If you're selected, what we offer is $200,000 in funding for 7.5% equity, and that's through the SkyDeck Fund, which is our partner fund. In terms of the program, I'm very proud of the program that we've built over the years. I'm also the head of program. Every batch, you have access to some 250 or more unique office hours with advisors and mentors in our network, 50 to 70 workshops in what we call Berkeley Acceleration Method. A lot of that content and workshops are front-loaded to the beginning. All of it is optional. You choose which workshops you want to attend. Only about 25 of the workshops are kind of predetermined. They're the foundational workshops. I work really closely and we meet all of the startups at the very beginning, find out what the knowledge gaps are, and we take a highly custom approach to programming. So if someone says, yeah, I would love, an advanced sales strategy workshop for B2B companies, then I go and I make sure we have a workshop that is what they need. We also feature a Midas and Unicorn Fireside series. This is kind of referencing top 50 VCs in the Valley and unicorn founders that have had over $1 billion valuations come in and talk about their experiences and share tips. I also would say we have a huge emphasis on networking. During the time that you're part of our accelerator program, you'll probably, throughout the 5.5 months, attend 20 or so networking events. It's a lot. But our goal is to supercharge your network because that is one of the most incredible offerings that we have, the network that is tied to UC Berkeley and all of the industry experts that are in our advisor mentor network. How we do that is we have very structured meet and greets at the very beginning during the first 6 weeks with us. You have at least 7 or 8 meet and greets that you attend, and you meet, several people in back-to-back 20-minute meetings. Usually by the end of the first 6 weeks, you've met somewhere between 60 and 100 of our advisors and mentors one-on-one. We also do, curated pitch practices. So you get a lot of coaching around pitching, a lot of social events with our network, our alumni, our mentor network. And we have in our advisor mentor network, we have over 700 people. You can click on this link if you want, or check out the URL listed here if you want to see who some of the luminaries in our network are. It's really a stellar, network of people. Just yesterday, we saw some advisors at one of the climate tech networking happy hours that we had. And, we have people like Mark Tarpening, who is the, original CTO of Tesla, as, in our network. So people are always kind of blown away when they come to to our advisor meet and greets, and they're like, I can't believe I just met, this executive from this company. And I like everyone I'm meeting is such high quality. So it is quite impressive. Um, a lot of people, I know you're here today because you're really wondering why SkyDeck. I mean, there's so many different accelerators, but like, why should I invest my time to apply and come to SkyDeck if selected? Um, I would say there are a couple of things that I would emphasize that we are really good at. We're really good at helping startups achieve traction and leveraging our network to help open doors for you so you can talk to the people that you need to be talking to. And we're able to do that because we are UC Berkeley. We have access to 510,000 living alumni from around the world. So if you identify that you need to speak to a specific person from a specific company, and we're able to find someone usually in the Berkeley alumni network who works at that company, even if someone on staff does a cold outreach for you and says, hey, like, the ex-founder would love to connect with you. They're part of Berkeley's Accelerator. A Berkeley alumni is very often inclined to be helpful. And that affinity, that alumni affinity is really extraordinary. As you know, Berkeley is, one of the leading research universities in the world. We are so proud. Last year, PitchBook named us as the #1 university in the world for producing the most number of venture-backed startups. And that is, I would say SkyDeck is a huge part of that story because annually we're accelerating some and working with almost 250 plus companies across our 4 programs. So we do have an accelerator, but we also have an incubator, an international program. But, our marquee program is very much the accelerator. That's where a lot of staff spend their time. We have access to 42,000 students across all of our programs, undergraduate, graduate, and postdoc, and hundreds of MBAs. We also do a lot of talent matching. So we have 3 intern fairs across the year and match annually 800 interns to our SkyDeck companies. So even if you become an alumni, you can keep coming back to the intern fairs, which is a huge perk. I should mention briefly that we also have a satellite campus in Europe for those that are focused on going to market in primarily Europe first. That is called SkyDeck Europe. The terms are slightly different. Instead of 200,000 for 7.5% equity, the SkyDeck Europe program offers 145,000 euros for 6% equity, in part because it's a different partner fund that invests. So again, if you are interested, you should just consider applying to Europe. We see a lot of startups apply to both programs. When you apply, I think question number 4 says, do you want to apply to Berkeley SkyDeck or SkyDeck Europe or both programs? I always say cast a wide net, see which program you get into. It's very competitive to get into both. By the numbers, the acceptance rate into Berkeley SkyDeck is about 1%. Last batch, we had almost 2,300 applications. We accept 20 to 25 startups each batch. As I mentioned, we have a network of over 700 advisors, mentors. They are 85% Berkeley alums and 40% also happen to be angel investors. I will say this, almost every single batch, people ask me what's in it for them. How is it possible that I'm getting this amazing help from this expert? Like, what are they getting out of it? And one of the unique things culturally about Silicon Valley is that it's just flush, with people who have been in the tech world and they've kind of risen to the, height of what they could be doing. And the thing that's most gratifying for them is to give back to founders. And that's usually why they apply. It's actually very competitive to become an advisor at SkyDeck. We usually get about 100 or 125 applications per quarter, and annually we probably only accept 30 to 40 new advisors. So we take a very curated approach and really vet for their enthusiasm to give back and to help. If you're part of the program, you also get over $750,000 of access to credits, discounts, and benefits, and that's by way of Google Cloud credits, AWS credits, deep discounts to Carta, Stripe, Brex, office hours, accounting, PR help. So it's a lot. And over the past, I think 10 or 12 years, actually this is outdated. 1,800 startups have come through SkyDeck, and in aggregate, they've raised $2 billion. All right, I'm going to fly through the schedule. The way that before COVID, we were kind of mandatory in person for the entire 5-6 months. And after COVID, we realized, a lot of people are, have families back at home. They're from all over the world. And now that we've kind of rethought and restructured our program. So the way that we do it now is the first 6 weeks, you're with us in person. So that's roughly like November 4th to December 15th. And you're with us. There's a lot of programming, there's intensive networking, and it's intense. I won't lie. It's intense, and you need to be in person. At least the CEO and usually one other founder from your team is in person in Berkeley with us. And then there are about 2 months where you go home, you're working wherever you're based with your team, and you're building traction. We're still engaging with you many times a week around how you're doing, who you're talking to, who you would like to talk to, helping you with strategy, potential pivots, etc. And then the last 6 weeks, all CEOs must come back in person. And you start the last 6 weeks off with 1 week of fundraising workshops, about 8 fundraising workshops around how to figure out how much you should be raising, what your, strategy is, who you should be talking to, how to pitch well, how to think about closing that first term sheet. We have a lot of the VCs teach some of the friendly VCs teach some of those workshops. And then you go into 4 weeks of investor month, where the SkyDeck Fund helps curate about an average of 30 to 50 one-on-one meetings with VCs, where you sit down and you can have these early conversations leading up to demo day. This is really unique. As a former founder, I only wish I had access to investor month. And we've seen with changing tides that this investor month is really important. In the past, it might have been much easier just to close around demo day, but investor month is really crucial. And, depending on how hot and sexy your startup is, you can have more than 50 meetings. I think one of the startups that came through last batch had 117 meetings. It was extraordinary. And they didn't sleep. They were very exhausted because those 117 meetings happened over 4 weeks, but it was insane. All right, so the typical applicant, who are we looking for? Ideally, you're somewhere between 6 months to 3 years old. We'd like to see some traction. We know that it's a little bit hard to have traction if you're super deep tech or life science, so you don't need to have this traditional type of traction if you follow into deep tech or life sci. But if you're a B2B enterprise company, some unpaid pilots or LOIs, or some paid revenue is nice, whether it's somewhere between 3 to 100K MRR. And yeah, we'd like to see unique and differentiated IP. Ideally, your IP is so unique that it has a chance of overtaking market incumbents. And we do often see startups, I think at least 70% have raised a little bit of funding, but probably not more than $1 million. There are some startups that have not raised, so maybe 30% have not. We might be first money in. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Sanjay, and he's going to talk about the investment and everything else. Sanjay?
Yep. Hi, everyone. As Sybil mentioned, my name is Sanjay, and I work on the SkyDeck Fund team. So think of the SkyDeck Fund as the financial vehicle in which every company going through the Accelerator program is getting the investment. So we're on our second fund right now, and we're really excited to continue to partner with this Berkeley SkyDeck Accelerator to fund the companies. So as you can see on the slide, the investment is $200K for 7.5% of the company, to around 2.6 million valuation, structured as a and everything around the investment is to kind of help you also raise your money for your next seed round. So we do a lot of some of the work up front. So for example, the flip to the Delaware C Corp makes you a little bit more investable and de-risks you a little bit more for your next round of investment. And also by going through the accelerator program, you're also considered a little bit more de-risked from the eyes of the seed round VCs. Yeah, so you look at the valuation, 2.66 million. It's a safe investment. I wouldn't. It's not a priced round. Um, as Sybil said, a lot of the companies have raised before, so they may have like an intrinsic valuation of 4 million to 8 million. So I wouldn't think of like the 2.6 million as you taking a down round. VCs know that you're getting a lot of resources and advice from the accelerators, which is why we have that investment set as it is. So just want to make sure that was clear. We can go to the next slide on, yeah, I'm sure many of you all know this. I know there's a lot of people from the Bay Area here, but just for everyone, so everyone's on the same page, like why it's so amazing to, fundraise in Silicon Valley and why SkyDeck is super well positioned to help you do that. Um, you know, VCs are popping up all the time, and we have one of the largest networks to these VCs and angel investors in the world. And we have access from VCs that are doing pre-seed investing all the way up to like Series E, the latest stages of investing. And they all come to SkyDeck to find companies, which is great. Um, like I mentioned before, even though SkyDeck is considered, we do help de-risk the companies, unlike VCs and other ecosystems around the world, Silicon Valley VCs tend to have higher risk tolerances and a little bit more favorable deal terms, given that they work with startups like yours continuously. So it's great that we're able to also partner with them. And I think the most like underappreciated piece of being here in the Bay Area is just the ecosystem. There's events happening all the time. You just run into people. There are other founders, investors, uh, early employees, partners that you'll just run into at, the local coffee shop down the street, which is why it's incredible to be here. Yeah, and I'm gonna go into a couple of just like really interesting stories of companies that have come out of the Berkeley SkyDeck Accelerator. So this is David from Chris. Chris is a ML-based speech enhancement company. And there's two things I wanted to highlight on his quote that kind of was how he was able to raise his next rounds. It SkyDeck gave him the access to the network support and also helped hire top talent. So these are just like some ways that SkyDeck was able to help his company, but there's a lot we support in a lot of different ways. And here we have a couple of success stories split up by geography. Um, I'm assuming a lot of you know Lime. So Lime Scooters went through the SkyDeck Accelerator. For those who don't know, it's a like scooter company that help people get around different cities. Um, Deep Scribe is another really, really interesting one, an AI native medical scribe company. We invested back in 2019, and then they went on to raise $30 million post SkyDeck. These are some of our cool European-based companies. We talked about Crisp already. So they're from Armenia. We helped them hire a CEO, COO to fund the US operations, and then they raised 13 million post SkyDeck from Sierra Ventures. MindsDB is an incredible company, at high level, making data science easier for enterprises. They do a lot more than that. Raised 16.5 from Benchmark and then 30 million from Mayfield and NVIDIA in 2023. Skyloom is actually a really, really interesting one that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on. It kind of encapsulates what a lot of what SkyDeck's offerings are. Um, so so they're a deep tech space company. They were originally from Argentina, and it was really interesting because of the Argentinian investors didn't really know how to evaluate a company in their deep tech in the space because it was really, really risky. But US investors didn't know how to invest in Argentinian-based companies. So both investor ecosystems were a little unsure about what to do. SkyDeck became basically the bridge between that, where we de-risked the business model and then also introduced them to investors in the US and helped them raise a $50 million rate. Actually, yeah, over $50 million. And they actually were just awarded $18 million by the US Air Force to develop a hybrid space optical satellite communication. So a really, really cool story that encapsulates what SkyDeck's all about. KiwiBot's another one, went on to raise 5 million. They used like the UC Berkeley students and the restaurants to help to grow their business as well. And lastly, just a couple companies based in Asia. Prophecy is a data engineering platform. They closed 25 million after SkyDeck from Insight. And then ThinkSight doing blood diagnosis. They raised 20 million after SkyDeck. And one other thing I want to highlight is you can tell from these companies, they're also pretty, we're industry agnostic. So we're pretty broad, and it's through our access to our advisors in the UC Berkeley ecosystem that allow us to work with all different types of companies from all over the world. And then just super quickly on the program timeline. The application is open now and it goes until August 23rd. Selections will be done in the mid-October. It's a 5-month program. Demo day will be April 16th. And if you have any questions on the application, you can either reach out to me or Sybil.
All right. So one of the key questions we get, is how are you even evaluating these startups? And so to kind of, pull back the curtain a little bit and talk about how we're actually evaluating them, I'll just briefly speak to this, that our key criteria are really 4 things that we're looking at closely. One is team. How much of a product founder fit is there? What type of expertise have you developed in this industry? Or are you completely switching industries and now just tackling something you don't know about, right? So this is really important. Number 2 is product and IP. How unique and differentiated is your IP? Do you have patents? Like, how long have you been how long have you been in this space? How well do you know this product? And is your IP enough to overtake market incumbents and really bring a new value add to this industry? Market opportunity. A lot of startups are working on interesting opportunities, but it might not be seen as venture scalable. So we're really looking at the lens of, when you get to demo day and investor month, will we be able to help you successfully raise? Will VCs be able to see the dollar signs and the potential returns that they're going to make in investing? So if there's that opportunity, then yeah, that makes it more appealing to kind of select that startup. And finally, traction. If we can see that, over the months that you've been working on the company, and you've actually been able to achieve good results. And people are always trying to ask me, like, well, what exactly, how many users do I need to have closed, or how much revenue do I have to have? It's variable. We should, we kind of look at how long you've been in operation and what you've basically been able to achieve in that time. And we've been doing this long enough that depending on the industry, we know that there are very different standards for traction depending on what industry you're coming from. High-level application tips, I would just go, number 1, be comprehensive, succinct, and clear, but really think critically about how to, explain how you're going to be able to do this and actually succeed. Because chances are you think you're working on something unique, but we've probably seen 10 other startups apply before with some similar or related idea. And so the question is, like, why you? Like, what are you bringing to the table that will really make this succeed? So what unique insights do you have on the customer, or what unique, advantage do you have as a team or your IP that will really, make this work? I'll briefly go through the FAQs. People always say, do we need to be UC Berkeley affiliated? No, you do not have to be Berkeley affiliated. We are open to startups from all over the world. You could be from Colorado, you could be from India, or, Australia, wherever you're based, you're eligible. It is true that we have historically kind of focused on UC, like 40% are UC affiliated, but then, the rest are from everywhere else. And if you are an international founder, how can we help? Well, we do write visa support letters. And so that has been really helpful to date. Anyone that has really needed to acquire their visa hasn't really had an issue. I mean, I'll say it takes a long time and a lot of work and effort, and, in collaboration with a good immigration attorney. But so far, we've had several of our founders, get O1 visas, and some have just opted to stay in their home country as well, or they're, wherever else they're from. At what stage should you apply? I mentioned this briefly earlier. 6 months to 3 years old is usually the general kind of age of the companies. We do see some startups that are a little bit older. That's okay. That doesn't gate you. It shouldn't prevent you from applying. And then we are industry agnostic. We do have certain specialized tracks to provide specialized programming and resources to life science companies, semiconductor chip companies, climate tech companies, fintech, blockchain, and air and space companies. That's not to say that we prefer those types of companies. It just, we have additional resources for companies in those spaces. But yeah, we are open to startups from all over all the different industries. I would say we do have a reputation for being a deep tech accelerator. And in other words, we do tend to take a lot of companies that are sitting on some really unique IP that might, require years of time in a lab. But not, again, like we have a lot of AI companies as well that are B2B enterprise that, the founders weren't necessarily sitting in the lab. All right, so in terms of like the programming, I mentioned it's hybrid now. It's not fully in person. It's, for the CEO, six weeks in person up front, and then on the back end. And because we're a public university, we're required by the university to charge a program fee because technically we're giving away public university resources. And as a state school, we take, dollars from taxpayers. So we actually, to make it equitable, have to charge a program fee of $5,000. All right. I covered a lot of material, so we're now moving to the Q&A and we'll start recording so you can feel free to ask any and all questions. Jamie, do you want to stop recording? Oh, I can do that.